G'day guys, and welcome back to AdosTheGreat YouTube channel. So for today's video, I will be stepping into the shoes of a Queensland Origin selector. So this is obviously who I would pick and how I would line up the 18-man Maroons squad. Now obviously there is going to be some honourable mentions at the end of this video, because while people might think the Maroons don't have too much depth, I disagree. I actually think we have quite a bit. So let's go through it. Obviously, I had to dress the part. So I've got my, I think this is a Pilbara or Thomas Cook branded shirt, and then the trusty Akubra. So, I had to dress the part as a Queensland Origin selector. So let's get into it, guys, with the fullback. Obviously, there is a few options you could go with here. If Reece Walsh is healthy, he is definitely an option. Coming up, Jai Gray, probably not an option at this stage, but he's up there in the Dally M count. He was talked about as a smoky earlier on in the season. I don't have him there, but that's definitely another player you could look at. My pick for this one is going to be Kalyn Ponga. I know he hasn't been in career best form this year. He played very well on the weekend against my Rabbitohs, unfortunately. But yes, I think Kalyn Ponga, he's got to be the fullback. Even if Reece Walsh was healthy, I would still be going KP. I think he's the right choice there at fullback. All right, my wingers. So another one that is very controversial. So most people are picking Xavier Coates and Murray Taulagi. Now, while I agree with one of those picks, I'm actually going with a different option in the other. So my first pick for the wingers is Xavier Coates. I would say he is arguably the best winger in the NRL at the moment, or the most informed winger. Maybe Jacob Kiraz could take that off him, but at this stage, I do think that is his to hold on to there, and he will be at this stage one of the wingers of the year. So I think you cannot leave him out. And my other winger, again, this is probably going to be controversial, but I'm going with Selwyn Cobbo. Just, a meter eater out of trouble. I think he is going to be a vital part to the Queensland Maroons in 2025. I see a lot of people selecting Murray Taulagi, but I'm going with Selwyn Cobbo. I think he'll do a job for us. That is my pick there. All right, the centres. These two speak for themselves, and obviously you could look at maybe like a Dane Gagai or potentially a Jackson Purdue. I've seen a few people put his name up in the mix, but I am going to go with the obvious two options. Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow, who could also be an option of fullback, but I do think that at Origin level, he's just such a good defensive centre. And then the other one is obviously the tried and trusted Valentine Holmes. He'll be my other centre there, making up the back five. All right, the halves. Again, these two realistically pick themselves. So first and foremost, at 5'8", you could go with Tommy Dearden there. You could also potentially go with Ben Hunt, but I'm going with the man that's done it for years before, Cameron Munster. I think he's got to be locked into that number 6 jersey for now while he is fit and healthy. Eventually, I do think Tom Dearden will slot into that 6 jersey at some point in his career. That will be his jersey. But at this stage, I know Tommy Dearden's done a job there, and an incredible job at that. I think Dearden's one of the best defensive sixes in the competition. So, I can see a world where people and why people are picking him, but I've got to go with Cam Munster. And then my halfback is obviously going to be Daly Cherry Evans. Until he hangs up the boots, that is his number 7 jersey, and I don't see anybody coming too close to him. Potentially a Sam Walker. I do think in the future we probably will see a Sam Walker, Tom Dearden combo, but for now it's got to stay at Munster and Cherry Evans. All right, the front row. This is another one that is probably a little bit controversial. So originally I actually had Carrigan up in my front row, but I've moved him, and I'll explain why. But my number 8, so to start it off, we've got Lindsay Collins. Now, I've seen a lot of people naming him on the bench and picking players like Ruben Cotter or Corey Horsburgh over him. I think Lindsay Collins has to start. I love the energy he starts a game with. I think he's an incredible front rower. And he has to be in this squad somewhere. For me, it's a starting role, and that's why I've picked him in the front row. Number 10, I've gone with Tino Fa'asua Malawi. Again, look, I don't mind if you have him in the front row or at lock, either or. Personally, I probably prefer him at lock, but at Origin, I'm happy to select him in that number 10 jersey. We've seen him do a job multiple times for us there, so I'm going to go with him in the number 10. All right, my dummy half, if he is healthy, has obviously got to be Harry Grant. Now, a few other options. You could go Reed Marnie, you could go Ben Hunt, but I think Harry Grant deserves that spot. He will be, I'd say he will be fit, ready to go for Origin 1. Probably won't have a game under him before then, but he'll be fine. You know, he's a professional. He'll be right to go. I've got full faith in Harry Grant. All right, my second rowers. This one is very controversial as well because there is a big name player that I have left out of this squad, and that player is Jeremiah Nanai. So I'm not actually going with Nanai, and another popular option is Beau Fermor. I'm not going with him either. They're both completely out of my side. I can see why people would pick them. Absolutely can see why people would pick them, but they're not going to be in my squad. I'm going with an informed Jaden Sewer outside of the knock-on the weekend, which was horrendous. But outside of that, he's been really good all year, like, let's be honest. And he ended last year quite well as well, if I remember correctly. And then for a defensive second rower, a really, really underrated defensive second rower, in my opinion, Tom Gilbert. I think we've got to lock him in the number 12 jersey, and they will be my second row pairing there. And then the lock is obviously going to be Paddy Carrigan. Again, look, originally I had Tino in the number 13 and Carrigan in the number 10, but I think the combination is right. They can work off each other and play, you know, swap positions here and there. They're both, you know, big minute players. They both play 60 plus minutes. So I'm pretty confident that both of them can work something out together in the 10 and 13 jersey respectively. So yeah, that is my starting 13. And the bench, this is where it becomes very interesting. And I've got more bold picks here as well. So my number 14 is not Tom Dearden. Tom Dearden is not in my squad at all. I have gone with Ben Hunt. You know, we just know Dozer's been there. He's done it before. He's an experienced player. This probably will be his last Origin series, if I'm honest. But I think he's got to be in the 18 somewhere. And for me, it's the number 14. I think that suits him perfectly. Once again, and obviously, you know, if Harry Grant's not 100%, then Ben Hunt probably does slot into that number 9 jersey, in my opinion, because I do have a little smoky in my bench that I will talk about shortly. But the next player, I had to go with Ruben Cotter. It was pretty much a mix between Cotter, Hopgood, and Fodawaker. Unfortunately, Fodawaker and Hopgood do miss my team completely, so they are 2 honourable mentions, but they will not feature in my 17-man squad. I went Ruben Cotter. I just think, you know, he offers versatility. He can play front row, he can play second row, he can play at lock, he can fill in a dummy half if need be. Like, I think he's important to have in the team, so he will be my number 15. Number 16 is Big Red, Corey Horsburgh. I think he's got to be in the team somewhere. I think you're wild if you're leaving him out of your 17-man squad. He is having a career year this year, and I would be very surprised if he missed out on the team. The other honourable mention that does miss out on my team, and that probably rounds out the honourable mentions, is going to be Trent Liero. He was in my team up until last week. The ill discipline he showed against the Raiders was just, I can't have that in my Origin team. I need to see a few more games from him playing 10 out of 10 footy. He normally is around that 8 to 9 out of 10 each week, and last week was like a 3. So yeah, you can't always base things off one week, but he does miss my team because of that poor effort. And then to round out my 17, I've gone with a smoky here. It's a Bulldog. No, it's not Reed Marnie. It's Kurt Mann. And the reason I've gone with Kurt Mann is I feel like he can be the next Ben Hunt off our bench. He can play in the backs. He can fill in the halves. He can play lock. He can play 9. It can probably play in the second row if you needed him to. And I reckon he can play in the front row as well. He is to Queensland what Connor Watson is to New South Wales, in my opinion. And he must be selected in the 17-man squad this year. All right. To wrap it all up, my 18th man for Queensland, I'm going with Tom Dearden. Look, you're probably going to say, you got Ben Hunt, you got Kurt Mann, why the hell do you need Dearden as the 18th man? You're probably right. Probably could go with a Hopgood or Liero there, but I think Dearden, he's got to be somewhere in the squad. I can't leave him out. So, look, if you wanted to say Ben Hunt should be gone, Tom Dearden should be the 14th man, absolutely. Or if you say, mate, you can't select Dearden in 18, you got to pick a forward, or up to you. I don't mind, but that's what I'm going with. I do think that Tom Dearden can add value to this squad as the 18th man as well. But yeah, that is my 18-man Queensland squad. I'd love to hear yours. Drop it down below in the comments. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.